Hello. It is Wednesday, and if you're on the West Coast, it is noon, and that means it's time for another Courier Live. Really excited about the one today because we have a former coworker of mine, some kid who found me at a hackathon, and I decided to keep him. But I will let them introduce themselves.
Hey, yeah, you couldn't let me go. I couldn't let you go. Hi everyone, I'm Avi. And yeah, I'm here with Adrian. We're going to be doing some fun stuff with interactive email, and we're going to be using this tool that I'm building called Parcel, which is the code editor built for email development. Adrian, can you pull up my screen?
Yep, I'm going to switch your screen right now.
Cool. So yeah, so this is it. So just to give you a high-level overview, email is hard, it's complicated, and it has different constraints and complexities than other types of code. It's different than web development. It's different than writing an API. It requires different tooling, and so that's what Parcel is attempting to be. So it kind of goes through the different steps of building that email. So you've got your building, and your code looks different, right? You have MSO, stands for Microsoft Office syntax, so conditional statements that only run in Outlook. So being able to read those as real code instead of an HTML comment is a super useful thing, so you can easily parse and make sure that everything's, your brackets are lined up, that you have an opening table and a closing table, much easier when you have syntax highlighting. You have your different parts. You can send HTML, you should send a text version, you can send AMP, so you can have, interactivity that's supported in Gmail. Another thing is when you're developing, you're going to need assets, right? You need to send images, and it's important when you're testing in a live inbox that your images are actually live on the internet, so that when you load your email in Gmail, the image is actually there. When you send it to a tool like Litmus or Email on Acid, the images show up properly. So those are all important features. There's a lot of things here, and we'll go through more of it in a bit. But yeah, so that's what Parcel is. So that's who I am. So yeah, I'm just excited to have some fun and build an interactive email.
Yeah, and I have a long background working in email. I came from ExactTarget. A lot of the people I work with are from Eloqua. And so we know the pains around creating emails. Like I like to say it's the best HTML that the 1990s have to offer. And I don't think a lot of that has changed. And if it has, not everybody has adopted it. But at Courier, we try to make it easy for you by providing a nice drag and drop editor where you can have blocks, you can do a lot of things. But sometimes you need to do a little bit more than what we can have. And so we have a couple, what we like to call escape hatches built in. So you can use a template block to put handlebars code directly into one of our template messages, or you can just flick a switch and use handlebars for the whole thing. And so that's where Parcel is going to come in to play. What kind of fun things are we going to do with Parcel today and send them through?
Yeah, so we're going to be building a welcome email. So,
okay.
Adrian, you've got that test brand Treva,
yeah.
Set up. So we're going to be building a interactive email. So yeah, you're right. Like there's a lot of stuff that feels like 1997, right? If you're using tables because you want to support Outlook and you've got all that complexity there. But there's also a lot of, email clients that have support for a lot more CSS. And that's what we're going to be playing with, is we're going to be using CSS to essentially build an entire form, asking people 3 questions to make sure that, we give them as subscribers to our newsletter from this travel brand, the right emails, right?
Yeah. So you mentioned an interactive email. I don't know if that is a term that's widely used. Is this something that you came up with, or is it something that was floating out there? And what can an interactive email do?
So this is definitely not something I came up with. This is something that's widely known within the email community.
Okay.
Essentially, it allows you to put interactivity, right? Things that you traditionally think of as part of a website or an app inside the inbox.
Okay.
So that can be something as simple as having a hover over a button or having some animation play, or it can be as complicated as, completing a checkout process, after an abandoned cart inside the inbox without going to a website and not leaving your app. So somewhere you might have seen some stuff like that right now is, Google is pushing it a lot with their AMP for email development.
Okay.
And so you might have gotten emails from Google Docs, where it said you can reply right in the email and put a comment on a Google Doc comment.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So that's one type of interactivity is AMP. Another one is that, like what I mentioned, kind of playing with CSS, using CSS hacks to basically change the UI and then submit data to a server. And so that's what we're going to be doing.
Yeah. And so we're going to use the use case of a welcome email. This is a very universal case. I think almost everybody has some kind of welcome email. We send out a welcome email. So what kind of things are we going to be able to do with this welcome email to add the interactivity?
Yeah, so we're gonna use checkbox hacks. We're gonna ask 3 questions. We're gonna ask the person, what cities they want to travel to. We're gonna ask them if they want daily deals, and we're gonna ask them if they want monthly highlights about those locations. And that'll be it. Yeah.
So for our use case, our fake brand is called Treva. It's a travel agency. We thought that was a good idea. Back when everybody was traveling, it's still a pretty good use case for a lot of different push notifications and emails. But yeah, so the situation is you signed up for Treva and you get this first welcome email, and Treva is looking to add you to lists. So we'll be using lists on the Courier side. So why don't you get us started?
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm just gonna start. So we're just gonna interactive. Create a new folder. Inside of that, I'll create a new email, call it a welcome email. And yeah, so here we are inside of Parcel. Looks like your standard code editor. We've got our files and folders over here. Some fun stuff over here. Our code. We can switch between the text and the HTML versions. And then we've got our preview. And we're also going to be playing. You can see I'm playing with the localhost version because we're going to be playing with some experimental features.
Okay.
Stuff that isn't live yet, but is, I think, going to be super useful to help email developers build interactive emails, which is down here, which is going to be our state visualizer for the email, because it's a form. So there are things that people interact with. There's a state within that. So I'm going to start with using one of the snippets I have set up, which is my base email. So I'm just going to type ! enter, and we get our base email going here. Going to set up the subject. So we're going to say, welcome to Treva. And you can see we've got our accessibility, we've got our area label. So screen readers will interpret it properly. And then we've got our content. So just going to start with some super basic styles, just to make it look like a one of the Treva emails that other people might get through when they get other notifications through Courier. So I think we've got generally looking over here, we've got a border on the top. So I'm going to give it 3 pixels on the top, and you can see I'm typing in 2 places, 1, 2 on the table, and 1 on the div. So one will show in Outlook and the other one will show basically everywhere else.
Okay.
And I'm going to grab this color. And that will be, and then, the other thing was we need that white background. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So there's this important concept in email, especially interactive email, of progressive enhancement. So we kind of make things better for some people than, when those better things are supported. So one thing that isn't supported everywhere but is nice is that border radius.
Sure.
So we've got that here, so we'll just mimic that here, giving that border radius of 3 pixels, 4 pixels. I'm going to be picky, and then a box shadow too.
Okay.
So 0010 RGBA 000.2, right? So now we just going to get a nice little box shadow, and let's darken that, maybe 0.25. Cool.
Right.
So let's get into the fun part. I'm going to start with the title. Where do you dream of? Where do you dream of now? Question mark. And give it a paragraph. Let's ask. So what are we doing, right? We're going to get some info from them. Let's ask some questions. I don't know. What are we trying to do?
What people are watching is the hardest thing.
Yeah, no, right. Coming up with copy. I mean, copy is hard in general. So let's ask you some questions so we can send you the right deals and other fun things happening where you want to go.
All right.
And now we're going to get into the interactive stuff.
Okay.
So the the first thing we want to do is we always want to think about what it looks like when when an email client doesn't support interactivity.
Sure.
So we're going to start with an interactive version and a fallback version. So Parcel also has built-in support for Emmet, so we can just use interactive, and we're going to just write interactive for the moment. And then down here, we're going to do interactive, and we're going to do a fallback.
Yeah. And while you're doing that, we have a question. So if you're not creating the email greenfield, but maybe trying to take some existing mail that you have and make it progressively better, how does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of depends on what system you're using. So in Courier, you're able to use those HTML blocks inside of it. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to do something experimental, you wanted to put interactive email inside of a Courier email, you could stick it inside one of those HTML blocks and then write the fallback in that same block. And so you can kind of enhance and add to existing emails without really sacrificing any user experience for people where the interactive stuff, where that progressive enhancement doesn't work.
Yeah, so if your email was already created in Courier, we have blocks that allow you to add that functionality. If your email was created elsewhere and you're using something like handlebars, you can just add that functionality in.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool. And then the thing to make these two versions of the interactive and fallback work is we're going to add a checkbox. Actually, it's going to be a radio. Decided. We're going to mark it as checked, and we're going to give it an ID of interactive checked. Then, so you can see here we've got a radio button. We've got one div that's named interactive, one that's named fallback. So I have another snippet that I use, which is named interactive CSS, which will kind of handle, assuming I named everything correctly, will handle toggling those on and off.
Okay. And so this is a snippet that's for this example. It's not a snippet that's like built into Parcel.
Nope, but you can easily put it in. So we've got the snippet functionality here, and you can kind of build those out, and then use them just as you would expect. The fallback is hidden, right? You can't see it, and the interactive is shown. So if I were to get rid of that checked, then it would swap and interactive. So the other thing we need to do is we need to make the interactive hidden by default. So where it doesn't work, we want to hide it. So we're going to say display none, and this override here is making it visible. So now where interactivity is supported, the interactive version will show up. Does that all make sense? I know that was a lot.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay.
We'll do a bunch more examples like this. So hopefully I'll clarify as we go. So the next thing we want to do is actually ask the questions, right? So let's start with one of the questions. We're going to think about it kind of like we're going to have 3 divs, each one with a class of question, and each one is going to hold a question. So I'm going to do an H2. And what should the first question be? I think it's where do you want to go, right?
I think so. We talked about this before, and I can't remember.
The fun of live streaming. Okay.
Right.
So yeah, we've got where do you want to go, and we've got the answers of, let's say, San Francisco. I lived there for a year. I should know how to spell it. I hope that's right. London, Rome, and Paris. All places to go after COVID. Each of these we're going to put inside of a label.
Okay.
So the labels will essentially act like our buttons. So in this case, they're actually just functioning like checkboxes, right? You select them, and then we're going to submit them. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to have to create inputs for each of these. So each of these labels will be attached to an input, and it will turn on or off that specific checkbox.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're just kind of going to come up with a naming scheme of question, and we'll call it cities, and then this one's SF, this one's London, this one's Rome, and Paris. So inside of our interactive block, we're now going to create those inputs.
Okay.
So up here, we have this CSS that hides all inputs, so we're not going to see them appear, but we will see them appear in our state, because the inputs essentially hold the state of the email, right? Just like any form.
Sure.
So we're going to do an input, name it checkbox. It's going to be a type checkbox, and we're going to give it a name of cities. And we're going to do 4 of them. And then we're going to give each of them the ID of this one's city SF, ID of cities London, cities Rome, and then cities Paris. And so we can see down here now that each of these, nope, one of the labels is broken, but each of these each of these inputs has appeared in our state. Okay. Right, so you can see the state of them, and you can see they're all set to false. So I'm going to select San Francisco. When I do, we can see the history. We have cities is now cities SF is now true, and the state is updated. So we can easily kind of see that state. And fun thing is, if there's no label visible, then the state itself gets kind of hidden, so we can see what we're actually viewing. So it makes it much easier to actually kind of code for what's happening behind the scenes. The other nice thing that Parcel is doing here that is just one of those things that's behind the scenes, so you don't notice it, is it's actually every time we code, it updates the preview automatically, and Parcel is restoring the state. So we don't have to recheck the boxes to get to the exact point that we are inside the email.
That is nice. A little hot reloading.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hot reloading for email. So there we go. So yeah, so now let's have some fun. We're gonna make things pretty.
Let's make it pretty.
So let's start with cities SF, and then for each of these labels, let's give them a class that we can target.
Okay.
Oh, actually, you know what? We need to do. What are we doing? So when this guy is checked, we want this guy to have specific styles.
Okay.
So we're going to give this one an ID of cities SF button. And so when we have cities SF up here, when this one is checked, then we're going to target, this is the CSS sibling selector. So that will jump down to this guy. So we're going to say the question. And then inside of that, we're doing cities SF button. So now we've targeted so that when SF city is checked, then we're going to make this button look differently. And for the moment, let's just make it bold.
Okay.
And let's see what went wrong. So IDs, that.
I like how you kind of set out on this kind of adventure of like, we do all this stuff like this for web applications. Can we do it for email? And like for part of it, I watched you like little by little, you made creating an email like creating a web application, which for me, that makes it really nice. I think a lot of developers are asked to like create emails because they might not have something like Courier where we can separate out the call to send the email and have a nice UI for somebody to create it. And so you see all these like really ugly emails that just get the point across. It's like the ticket told me that we need an email that says welcome, and that's what we got.
Yep, 100%. And yeah, like there's more to do, right? There's so much to do inside of the inbox. So you can see now when we check it, so we can refresh the state. So when I check it, it's checked, right? And so now we can see that's bold. So we're just going to do that exact same thing.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? Let's make this one fully pretty, and then once we do that, we're gonna then make have the right styles when they're checked. So here we're just going to give it a class of question option, and just to kind of move a little quickly, we're going to do question option. Let's give it a width of 40%. I'm going to give it And we're just going to give it padding of 50 pixels. We're going to give it a border of 1 pixel solid. And we're going to go back to Courier and grab one of our other brand colors.
Yeah.
This nice yellow. We're going to give it display block so that we don't have this craziness going on.
Yeah.
Inline block. So we want them to adjust to the width of the content. Remove that side padding, center line to text.
Just a lot of fun CSS stuff.
Yep.
We're going to get away from.
So just give it some spacing above and below, and some border radius just to match the styles of everything else here. What do you think? Good start? That look clickable?
Looks good to me.
Another thing, I guess we should give it a cursor because that's what people expect when things are clickable. And the other thing, right, is, email, people don't expect emails to be interactive. So we should give it a hover style so that, when you hover, something happens, right?
Right.
So that people know, hey, you can click on this. So we're going to grab that same color from up here. And that's a little much. So, Parcel uses the same base editor as VS Code, something called Monaco. So one of the nice things that we get is we can actually use this color picker. And
I thought this looked a lot like VS Code as you were going through.
Mm-hmm. So now we can just turn that to a RGBA color. And now we've got this nice hover going.
Nice.
Then we'll just give this a nice color. Do the same thing, darken it a bit to do that. And this one I want as a hex, so cool. We've got that as a hex value. Now we've got our options. The last thing is we've got to make it so styled so that someone selects it, right? So here we're going to give it the right, we're going to give it just that, let's see. I'm trying to think. Here we go. Live streaming, fun stuff. This is my first time, by the way. It's different. It is different.
It's different. Yeah.
So we're going to give it that background color, and then we'll give the font color of just turning it white. And so now, when I select this, we can see that this guy is now selected.
Okay.
Right, and we can unselect it, so we can see all that history appearing down there, and we can always kind of restart from scratch. But yeah, so we've got that. We're going to copy and paste this, just the selector, 4 times for each of our cities. So we have London, Rome, and Paris.
Paris. Did we not do New York for this one? Maybe I'm thinking of. That's okay. I don't want to go to New York. I'm already here.
I would love to come and visit. Post-pandemic. So then we just have to tie the IDs together here.
All
so
right.
in our HTML, we're just gonna drop these guys. We're gonna give Rome and Paris their IDs that they so richly deserve here.
Sure.
And there we go. So now we can select any and all of our guys. So this is, this function inside of the email. So it's always a good idea to test. So for the moment, we're just going to do a quick test. I'm going to hit send test, and we're going to send it to my test inbox here.
Okay.
And I've got that hooked up to my Apple Mail. So over here, we can see this is now working inside the inbox, just how we want it to.
Cool. Yeah.
So we can go to the next step, which is putting in the slides, right? So we need a next button so that someone can move to the next slide and ask me the next question.
Okay.
So for that, we're going to create a new class. We're going to name it question button. It's going to be for cities next. And I think that should be all we need to do. So then we're going to name this next. And we're going to copy a bunch of styles.
Thank you. Next.
Yep. Oh, we should theme music? Is that?
Yeah, we're gonna be so grateful. So grateful.
Always. Okay, then we'll grab this brand color again here and change out the, kind of repeating that same process for this button. And then we're going to give it that same kind of hover style. So when we hover over this, when we hover, not hover, we'll give it a background color. And again, we're just going to turn this into an RGB and match it here. And so now we can see that this is also clickable. So the fun thing is now, instead of just having it selected, we're going to show totally different content instead. So we're going to wire up that part. So right, we ask the question, they select the options, they click next. Now we need to show them the next question. So to do that, by default, what we're going to do is we're going to actually hide all the questions. So this question should be now gone, will be gone now. And then we need to actually turn that back on. So to do that, we're going to give the question a specific ID. So this is the cities question, so I'm just going to name it cities. And by default, since cities is our first question, we're going to make it visible by the default. Then we're going to make it invisible, right? We're going to hide it when a new ID is selected. So we're going to name this cities next, and we're going to give it the ID cities next, tying it to this button. And when this guy is checked, so when our cities next is checked, then cities goes away.
Okay.
So
in emails, we don't have all of this JavaScript running. So we're not writing like script functions to do all of this. We are taking care of all of this in CSS. So like
exactly.
interactivity we have is CSS based.
It's all CSS. It's CSS all the way down. So we're going to select these few options. Then when we click next, so we can see cities next went to true. I wrote block instead of none. So now it's gone. So if we refresh, right, we can see I click next and it disappears.
Okay.
So the other thing we have to do here is we're going to show the next question. The next question is if they want daily deals, right?
Sure. Yeah. Because we've selected destinations and then we're gonna move on to the types that they have. So we have daily deals and highlights.
Monthly highlights. Yeah.
Okay.
So when they've clicked the next from cities, then we want to show the daily. So now we need to create our daily. So it's going to be named daily, and it's going to be a question, just like what we have up here. So by default, that's hidden. But because cities is selected to next, we can have our next question title be, do you want daily deals? And so we should have that appear right over here. So
nice. Now
we can, now it becomes much faster because most of the CSS is written for all the styling.
Sure.
So we can, yep.
And this is really cool because you're kind of interacting with it and building it at the same time. So you're not having to like use your brain to filter out different parts of the email, like where I would be used to like, okay, I'm going to ignore this section because now I'm working on the part where I hit next, because they won't actually see that, but the little preview editor is taking care of all of that because it remembers the state.
That's exactly right. Thank you for, that's dead on. So we can see all these fields over here, cities, London, Rome, and Paris. They're all grayed out. They're all hidden, right? You can see they're hidden because, cities next is true, but I can pop back down by clicking the history, right, to toggle it back to false. So we don't have to think about that. As we build it, we're just getting to view it, right? So it's just a very smooth experience there. So we're going to create another button here. So with this one, we just have two possible answers, right? Do you want it? Yes or no?
Yeah.
So we're going to have a couple of more inputs that we're going to add up here. One is going to be daily yes, and the other one is going to be daily no. And so now we're going to come back up here. We're going to add in another input. This one's going to be a radio.
Okay.
And we're going to name it daily. And this one is going to be daily yes. And this one's going to be daily no. And so we can see down here, this now appeared, and it's a radio because it's one of, right? It's not, you can't select multiple, it's either yes or no.
Okay.
So that's how radios work, right? Checkboxes select as many as you want. Radios just select one or the other, or one of any of these options. So we can see both of the options appear down here. And now if we click it, we should actually see, right, that daily yes was selected in our history, and we can also see that over here. So we don't actually have any styling for when that is specifically checked though now. So we got to do that same process.
Okay.
So here we're going to say ID is going to be daily yes button. Actually, we don't need that. I'm getting ahead of myself, because when they click yes or no, we want to show the next question.
Right. Oh, right. That's right. Yeah.
Right. So we can actually hop straight down next, and the last question I'm going to ask is, do you want monthly highlights?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to do a multi-select. So just like in VS Code, you can do Command D to select multiple all the words going down. So we can do a quick change to highlight.
Yeah.
And do you want monthly highlights? Is going to be our question. And then we have another yes, no. We have highlights, yes, no. So here we just need to pull in that same CSS that we did here, right? So this is select or move from cities to daily is this CSS.
Uh-huh.
So now we're going to do move from daily to highlights.
Okay.
So we're going to do, oh, went too far.
You do that all the time.
Yep. So we're going to do if you have daily yes checked, or you have daily no checked, right? So we're doing both of these selectors. Then we're going to hide daily. And then if you have daily yes checked or you have daily no checked, then we're going to show
what did you
highlights.
call it? Highlights. That's it.
So now we can see that we're a monthly highlight, right? Because daily is yes is checked. So just to move back for a second, just moving all the way through the email, selecting a couple, then we click next, then we click daily deals, we click yes. Do you want monthly highlights? There's more than one highlight in each city per month, hopefully.
Sure. Yeah.
And now we're on to the last thing, which is saying thank you, right? We want to give them a little thank you message.
Mm-hmm.
So here we're going to make it another question. This one is going to have the ID of thank you. And right now, let's just write, we're going to make it a nice H1, and we're just going to say, oh, thank you. And then we can always make this email prettier in a bit. But for now, since we're around 30 minutes into this, I figure we'll move on to the fun tracking part.
Sure. Yeah.
The form, and then getting it into Courier. So here we're doing the last thing, which is moving from highlights to thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can see that we've preserved all that state. We've got our yes, and now we're down onto our, oh, we need to create those inputs too I didn't do that. So that's I can see that. Yeah, I was looking at the state, I was like, oh, is it? Yeah, so we don't have it. We need to create that state. So when we have highlights, yes, or highlights no for either of these, then here we're going to show our thank you. Thank you. So same thing here. We're just going to do a quick copy and paste, replace all those daily with highlights. And now when I select yes, now we have thank you. Great. So that's our interactive email, right? So this all works within an inbox. And again, always be testing when you're building things. So we're just going to send another quick test. And there we go. We've got our email. I click next. It went to the next one. I clicked yes. It went to the next one. I click no. Boom.
Nice.
We did it. We did it.
But what does it do? What does
What
it
does
do?
it do? Right. So we have our email, which is, I mean, honestly, I'm so excited every time this works. Like, it blows my mind every time I do it. I'm like, whoa, in the inbox, a form. I just get so excited. Okay, gonna calm myself down, and we're gonna do the.
No, just go on.
Okay. Sorry, I got a deep breath, Avi. Deep breath. Let's do some tracking. So the tracking here isn't tracking like in behavioral. It's actually taking all those options that people selected and submitting them to the server.
Okay.
So for this, I have another snippet that I have pre-built called track, and this one has kind of two important parts, which is we have a trigger. So what input are we looking for being checked? And then we have a URL, which is going to load. So for everyone who's watching, if you haven't kind of dived into how email tracking works, it's basically pixel tracking. So when an email is opened, there's an invisible pixel. It's 1 by 1 pixel, transparent background, GIF or PNG, whatever you want. And it loads, and the server records when it loads, and the user agent and all that, so we can actually see what person from what device opened it when.
Yeah.
So the interactive tracking works the exact same way. We're going to load, for every option, we're going to load a specific image, which is going to have an ID, a user ID, a field value of cities or daily or highlights, and then a value of yes or no, or Paris, Rome, so on. So does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I remember talking about this in college when it was just theory. Like in my web applications class, they were like, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool like to do this?" And I was like, "No one will ever do that."
And here we are.
And then one of those places gave me a job, so yay.
Never bet against the internet, right?
Right.
Or email. Okay, so first one up. Let's do some stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to just take a second to think, just thinking out loud.
Gather your thoughts. It's fine. I can fill time.
Cool. So we need to do it when the person clicks the last question, right? That's when everything gets submitted, right? Uh-huh. So to actually have any of these respond, so to when highlights yes or no get selected, these guys actually need to be at the top, because you can only select downwards, right? You can select siblings to the right, but you can't select anything siblings above. The sibling selector is only afterwards. You can select,
like siblings. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Sure. You can only go down. As the youngest, we're all down. I don't know who it is. That's fine. Okay. So let's have some stuff trigger. So when highlights yes is checked, and let's do the cities first. So and the cities SF is checked.
Okay.
Then we're going to target the span next to it. So we're actually going to need to create that span. So we're just putting in a kind of placeholder tag, which is kind of how I like to do it. This I'm not totally sure if, I'm sure there are other email geeks, maybe someone who's watching who could share what they use to target. But I just like to have basically an empty tag to load the background image into.
Okay.
So we got all those spans here, these guys for each of our inputs. So when highlights yes is checked and SF city is checked, then we load in. For now, we're just gonna call this a test ID. That will be our user ID later when we put it into Courier. We'll use the mustache syntax to put in the user ID. Mm-hmm. The field is cities and the value is SF. Then the other thing we have to do here is say, what if they select no? So we're just gonna say no. And now that should, when someone selects all the way at the end and they selected SF, load this image into the email.
Okay.
So now we're just going to, let's actually take a second to test this out, right? Sure. So we're selecting SF, clicking next, yes. And before I click that, Adrian, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're doing on the server side?
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you want to talk about the scaffold part, and then I can
Sure. Yeah.
hop in and do?
So we're moving on to the server side, right? We built out our email. Now we're loading images that are running on this Glitch server. If you don't know Glitch, it's a great playground tool. It's got a full server running on the back end. It's great for prototyping out, building demos, and actually having stuff run in production really, really easily. So here I have this kind of scaffold built out, and all it's really doing is it's looking for a user ID, the field, and the value, same thing we had inside the email, pulling those values out, making sure that we have the user, and then if it's a cities, we add it onto this is very complicated looking code for add to the existing array. And if it's not cities, if it's the daily or the highlights, then we just set the value. And then when we get highlights, right, we basically submit it. And looking at this code, I'm realizing that what I'm doing inside the email is wrong. So this is good. We should. this is good.
Well, we have a backup email, right?
Yeah. No, everything is right except for this overly complicated part that I made, which is that I can just instead of when highlights get selected, we actually want to do it when the next gets selected, right? So as they go through it, we're going to submit the data each click. So we're just going to switch this out with cities next. So if you remember going back to the beginning of the email, that's this next button here, right? So same problem as before, I actually did it correctly, which is that I have this at the top so that it can select the city inputs below it. So if city is checked and SF is checked, then we load in this background image.
So what's going to happen is we can select the number of cities, like up to the 4, and then when you hit next, that's going to make a request to this server at that time. Okay.
Exactly. So let's, in our server, every time we get a request, let's just log out what we're getting.
Sure.
So we're getting an ID, we're getting the field, and we're getting the value. So we can see Glitch restart here. And now, when I click next, we can see that data came through. We have the ID of test ID, the field of cities, and the value of SF. So we've actually submitted right there data from an email to a server that we can do whatever we want with, right? So that's pretty cool right there. So we've actually kind of made our email talk to the world.
Sure.
So the next part is just a bit repetitive. We're going to do 4 of these because we need each of the cities. So we need London, Rome, and the last city is Paris.
Yeah.
So just to, again, test really fast, I'm going to select those all 4 cities.
Yeah.
And when I hit click next, we should now have all 4 submitted.
Nice.
Working. The next thing is, let's see, we want to do let's do daily next. So same thing, we're going to say when the daily yes is checked, then I'm actually going to use my trigger snippet here. Or track. Yep, there we go. So then we've got daily yes. And let's say that this is the daily field, or the ID. We're going to give it the same ID of test ID. We're going to give it the daily. The field is named daily, and the value is yes. And repeat that for no. And then we can take both of these guys, paste them one more time, and do
highlights.
Oh, I did a Command F. Let's try this again. Select, highlights. And now, if everything's working correctly, I'm going to go back to the server real fast and get rid of this this log that we're doing here. Because we have this log down here, which is when highlights comes in, we build each of the lists that we go to Courier. So assuming this all works as it's supposed to, then Adrian, I'm going to hand it over to you in a second.
Yeah, and so whenever he says we build the list, what we're actually doing is we're building list names that can be used with the Courier list API. So it's going to be treva.highlights highlights dot the city name, Treva dot daily, I think, dot the city name. So that way, whenever it gets over to the server, we can use that information to subscribe this recipient to those lists. So,
cool.
Are you going to run a test? Are we going to see what comes over?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll do two tests. One, I'm going to do the test in the preview, and then the other test that I'm going to do is actually in the inbox. So make sure that it's working in like the perfect environment and working inside the inbox. Okay. So we're going to do San Francisco and Rome, and I would like daily deals, and I do not want monthly deals. And now we can see that I got a test ID, which is the ID that was all tied together. We have Treva deals SF, and we have Treva deals Rome, right? So I selected two cities. I selected that I wanted just the daily deals. I didn't want the highlights, and all that data came through. So now we can actually hand it over, and yeah.
And we'll code this up. All right. So
yeah,
let's switch over to let me go to the right screen. All right, and then we'll switch. Oh, hold on, it's loading.
Okay.
Yeah, but we'll take this information and we'll use the Courier Node library to add this recipient to the list. So
cool. So I'm going to actually download this as a zip file and then send this over to you so that you can import it into Courier.
Oh, fun. Yeah, okay.
So now we got the zip file and it's got all the things we need.
I was like, you have it right there. I think I'm gonna have to refresh. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now I'll switch over to mine. Okay, so here's me. We'll go down here, and this is where we want to push the courier. So I've gone ahead and gone into my package JSON here, and I've added at @trycourier/courier, and you can get more information on our GitHub about that. But you can just npm install at @trycourier/courier and get access to our API that wraps all of our client library that wraps all of our APIs. I'm going to go ahead and copy this piece here. Wait, where is it? I want this one. So I don't have to retype it. So I need to go back into server and I need to actually use that. So I'll just put this in here. And so now we have access to the Courier client. The next thing we're going to want to do in order to use it is we need to initialize a client. So I'm going to copy this here too. So I don't have to retype. But down here where he left me this wonderful little to-do, I'm just going to paste this in. And with Glitch, you can modify this .m file. I'm not going to click on it because I'm not going to display my my auth token. But if you put a key, a environment variable of courier_auth_token, then the client library knows to pick that up. So I'm just going to take this out, and this will create me a Courier client that is that uses the auth token that's in the environment variable. So whenever you're building things with Courier, we always say to use a environment variable because you don't want to accidentally expose your auth token, because that would be bad. I've checked many into GitHub and just left them everywhere. When I was working with Avi at SparkPost, I would just keep creating new ones and deleting them because I just knew that I was going to expose it somewhere. All right. So what we want to do is for each of these lists that he has so kindly constructed for us, add the recipient to that. So that test ID is what we call what we're going to use. We're going to use a recipient ID for that. So every message you send to somebody in Courier, you need a recipient ID for them. And if you want to add people to lists, a list is a collection of recipient IDs. We're going to assume that this message was sent with a profile stored in Courier. So the recipient ID also relates to a profile that has information like your email, your phone number, family name, given name, all of the information that is needed to send messages through Courier. And so one of those needs to exist to add it to the list. The way that we're sending it today is we have gone in and created profiles for both Avi and myself. So we have something to reference. So we are getting back, lists, and lists is just an array of strings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to want to do a loop over that. And we wanted, I've done this before. Which loop do we want to use? There's the one that works with asynchronous functions.
So yeah, we can do for, and then parentheses, and then we can do let list, I believe it's of lists.
Okay.
Yep, and that will work with async code, and I believe we'll be pulling the key or the value off of the array, but we'll see.
We'll be pulling the value off the array?
Yeah, so each will give us each string. I can never remember if it's of or in. I think it's of.
Ooh, okay. But what we're going to want to do, we'll just go ahead and code it up, and then we'll see. So we'll do courier.lists.subscribe. Actually, I can show you an example. So if we go down here, we are going to be doing subscribe single recipient to a new or existing list. And so it's going to be courier.list.subscribe. We're going to give it the list ID and then the recipient ID. And so that's what's going to be done inside the list. And I'm just going to await it because we don't need the response. Not in this case. So courier.list.subscribe. And we want to pass it first the list ID. So not sure that, but then ID is where you put the recipient ID, right?
Yep.
Okay. And so that should run for each list that gets created. And I think that's all we need to, that's all. Oh, wait. I said it and then I didn't do it. We're going to await this because this is an asynchronous function. Okay, so we need to make this function async.
That was a good idea. Nice.
Yeah, to be able to do an await inside of a function, it needs to be an async function unless you're using like the brand spanking new version of Node, which I don't think Glitch supports yet. All right. Maybe we should add some console logs.
It's probably a good idea. Let's console out the list and the ID, right? To see if we're actually getting all the right values.
Yeah. Let's do. All right, work. That'll do, pig. Cool. All right. So now we think we have that working. Do we want to test it on your side to
sure, yeah.
come over, yeah. Or so what you want to do is you want to change that test ID to your Avi Goldman kid recipient ID. Do we want to go? Let's switch back over to you.
Sounds good.
Back to you, Avi.
All right. So we're going to do a refresh on here. Take a look for our test ID here.
Yeah.
And going to just go ahead and select all the test IDs. And is it
all
Avi?
Uppercase. Yeah, Avi Goldman kid.
Cool. And if we've got time later, the one other thing that I want to kind of do was build in that fallback. So okay. we didn't really do much with it afterwards, but if we've got time, we can play with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now I'm just going to go ahead and fill out the form. So San Francisco, Rome, Paris. Next, I want daily deals, and I don't want monthly deals.
All right.
And so on our logs here, we should be able to see that we added Avi Goldman Kid to Trevor Deals Rome, Trevor Deals SF, and Trevor Deals Paris.
Nice. Okay, so that looks like that worked. Now let's get it into Courier. So you want me to do that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, back to me.
Woo.
And you put that zip file where?
Oh, I gave you the email.html right there.
Okay. So this is what we're going to need. Cool. So we'll go over to Courier and we'll just create a new notification. So I'm going to create a new notification and I'm going to call it Treva Interactive Welcome. Welcome? Yes. See, it happens to everybody. So we're going to select email. Because Avi is here, I'm going to select Spark Post. So I created this like over 5 years ago. It's still working. I still get emails from it. So and then we'll go in and create the message. So this is what our normal editor looks like, where you can add blocks. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this button, and this is going to switch it over to our handlebars override. And this is what's going to allow us to copy and paste just HTML into it, and then use handlebars to do things like substitution. So let me go back over here to email. I'm going to copy all of that, and we'll paste it in. And then we need to go to, and we need to put in the...
just a bit lower there.
Huh?
You scrolled past it.
Did I? Oh, okay. So I gotta look in the code and find where I replaced.
There you go, right there.
Okay.
Yep.
Does the?
Yep.
Oops. Okay, so that didn't work. And it is, so we got to do a handlebars, so a double mustache, and then we use the var helper. And then in a string, we can provide a JSON path, and we provide access to the recipient ID that you pass into the send call through this path, and the path is $.recipient. And so that will pull out the recipient ID that's passed into our send call and stick it into here. And now I just need to copy that many times.
Nice. So just to talk it all the way through, what this looks like is someone signs up for Treva. They trigger an event through Courier of like a sign up, and then from that, Courier sends out notification. So they're going to send out this email. The recipient ID will get replaced in. When the person fills out the survey in their inbox, all that data gets sent to Glitch, and that updates the list inside of Courier, or puts them on all the lists. And then whenever Courier, using like the Courier list functionality, we can send to everyone who's interested in the daily deals about whatever cities they specified, just kind of all connected through. Yeah.
Yeah. So awesome. During the sign up process, we're going to assume that part of the sign up process, whenever they hit save, is it gets saved into the Treva database. But then there's also a process that kicks off and creates them a recipient or a recipient profile in Courier. So you can use the profiles API to do that. Super easy. You can save just the information that you need for Courier. All right, so I've set all of that. We can go into our preview. I'm going to create just an empty test case. That's fine. But here we go. Looks like what you did. Oh, one thing that did not come over is, let's go grab the subject.
So that'd be in the title tag. Should be at the very top.
All right. Title. There it is. Welcome to Treva. And let's go in here. And we can even add, so welcome to Treva. Let's do given name, because that's one of the profile things. So our variables are a single mustache, where handlebar uses a double mustache. So put that in there, and then we can go into the key, into the preview, and I'm going to update my test event. So in the profile, there is a given name that it can pull from. And Avi.
Hi.
Hi.
That's me.
And so that's saved. And now we tell it to regenerate. And does that mean that I didn't save it, or? Oh, sorry, I did it wrong. Okay, let's go in here, and I need to go back into design. We're pulling this from the profile, so it is profile.givenName. If you put in just given name, it's going to look for it in the data that's passed over in the send by default. So if we preview this again, hey, there we go. Welcome to Treva, Avi.
That's me.
And this looks like the way we have it set up. Preview is looking great. So we can go ahead and send a message. What? Oh, before you send, it's always important to hit publish.
Yes, it is.
All of those errors went away, so that's good. I imagine our engineer Riley as those messages yelling at me to hit publish, because she's usually the one that has to tell me to do that. But in our send tab, we can actually send the message, and so it gives you what the code looks like using our Node.js library, a few of the other ones that we have available. But I can go in here and I can set the recipient ID. I'll do me. So my recipient ID is Adrian 10036. If you've been with us before, I use it a lot. And this is, oh, hold on. It's going to. I'm going to change the test event, and I'm going to take this out for now, because it's going to pull from the profile that I have saved inside Courier. If I left that in, it would send that over as in the request, and it would do a merge, and my name would become Avi for this email. So we'll take that out. So we're not sending over any profile. We're not sending over any data. I'm going to send that to me. Brand doesn't matter right now. And so I'm going to hit send notification. And we can go over to our data and look at the messages and see that it did send. So that's good. It rendered, and it sent with Spark Post. And for any of those that have used Spark Post, this is what the result of a transmission, creating a transmission looks like. So we have one accepted recipient, which is good, and we get an ID. All right, so now let's go into my email. This is going to work in Gmail.
Not even a little bit. So this is the fun thing, is we get to see if the fallback is working properly.
Ah, okay.
So Gmail supports AMP for email. So if you're a registered AMP sender, you can build an equivalent version using AMP and get the exact same data. So that's one of the fun things of email, is you always have to think about how it's going to look. Once that I've seen there's like 20,000 different rendering possibilities. So there's a lot to think about when you build an email. And yeah, so one of them is what it looks like when, the interactivity doesn't work.
Where did it go? It's supposed to just be in here. Hold on. All right, so it's sent. Love doing some debugging. Okay. The profile that was loaded, Adrian.demo. That's some of my other information. So that was rendered. Has it just not hit it there yet? Promotions tab, social. Oh no, where did it go?
It got lost in the ether of email.
I know. Oh.
A very problem.
These are all the emails that I deleted to keep this clean. Let's do a refresh. Oh, there it is. All right, so I've not, for some odd reason, Gmail wasn't refreshing. And I've obviously not kept up my sender reputation with my Spark Post account, and so it landed in promotions. I'm going to do this. Boop.
Nice.
Hey, look, it's in primary. It's great. And so now whenever it pops up, it does hit the fallback. So that's what you were talking about earlier. Just real quickly, we probably won't go through how to do the fallback, but what would you do as a fallback in this case? Yeah,
so depending on what the full form looked like, if I want to ask more questions, maybe I would do something differently. But for this, I would simply just redirect them to an equivalent web form, right?
Okay, yeah.
The advantage of interactive emails and having it inside the inbound, the form inside the email, is you actually get a huge boost in conversion when you don't make people do that extra step. It's a company called Rebel Mail that was acquired by Salesforce a couple of years ago now. And they put out some stats where they worked with, I think, Home Depot and saw a 55% increase in conversions on reviews of products, 55%, when they made an interactive email and allowed people to take the action from within the inbox. So yeah, like you always want to think about the progressive. So if you can provide the same experience out of the inbox, do that. But if you can put it in the inbox, you're just going to get a huge boost in, the amount of conversions you have for whatever you're trying to get the user to do. So,
okay. Well, let's see. Is there a way that I can see this and fill it out?
Yeah. So if you have Apple Mail set up, that's like a good desktop application that supports it. And if not, you can send it over to my profile and I can pull it up on my screen.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll send it over to yours.
So you send another one through Courier. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do that. Go back to the message. Okay. So we're going to go back to this message that we called Treva Interactive Welcome. I'm going to go back to the send. This time I'm going to put in Avi's recipient ID. And should just be able to send it. And while he's checking that, I'm going to go ahead and go back over here, and we can see it went out.
Cool.
And it was rendered. Do you want me to flip over to you?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Wait, here we go. So we've got that same email. So we've got the interactive version showing now at the fallback. So I selected my cities.
Make sure you hit yes for both of them this time.
Hit yes, and I will hit yes. Got my thank you message.
All right.
And now flipping back over to you.
Back to me. And I'm going to, so just to make sure that it worked, that he was subscribed to all of those lists. So how many cities did you select?
I selected 3 cities, I want to say.
So
maybe 2.
Yeah, so you should be subscribed to 6 lists.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go to, where is it?
Looks like I selected 2 cities. So let's see what we got. Selected Rome and London.
Okay, and all right. So I'm gonna put in your recipient ID here. So this is one of the Profiles API's endpoints that allows you to get back the list that a recipient is subscribed to. So Avi Goldman Kid, and I'm going to request your lists, and we can see that you're subscribed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, okay. I must have selected 6. Cool. Or 3 cities.
Well, you selected 3 cities and you hit yes on both of them, so that results in 6. So now Avi is subscribed to 6 lists, all from interacting with that email. And we can go in and create our highlights emails. We can create our daily deals emails and send them to the list. And as a subscriber, Avi will get it. Because we named the list in such a way, we can do some fun things with pattern matching to where if we want to send a message to everyone who's interested in London, whether they're getting the daily highlights or the daily deals, we can send to treva.star.london, and that will combine both lists. So if somebody subscribed from one and not the other, and you wanted to get all the London folks, you can do that. And then if you wanted to get a list of everybody who subscribed to a Treva, so you wanted to send out some kind of brand central, you can do treva.star and pick up everybody. Nice. So that's some fun things that we can do with lists, and these were all set up using that email. Is there anything else that we should talk about with interactive emails? We didn't get a chance to do the fallback.
I mean, that pretty much covers it, right? Like that's like the big thing that we didn't touch is the fallback. You want to do lots of testing all the different email clients to make sure that the fallback is working everywhere. Mm-hmm. But other than that, we've done it, right? We've just increased our conversion rate potentially by 55% for welcome emails, and being able to properly reflect our subscribers' preferences and what they're interested in. We're going to get better results for our business now.
Yeah, and just do you have like a list of clients or like kind of things to watch out for. So we know that Gmail has their own thing, and the fallback is hit. But like, what clients are you seeing people using that this is working for?
Yeah, so a really great site. There's two sites I'm going to mention. One is called canIemail.com,
okay,
which is kind of like canIuse.com, if you know it, where they have support for a bunch of different features. Can I use this for the web? Can I email is for email? And so you can look at where interactive or where inputs are supported and where the check is supported and where siblings selectors are supported. Those are the features that we need for interactivity. And then the other one to look at is emailclientmarketshare.com, which is made by Litmus, where they've got really good information about what the breakdown is of kind of email clients and what's the most popular. But to answer the actual question, right, like Apple Mail on your desktop, iPhone, the default mail app are going to be the ones that have the best support right out of the box. So those right there will give you, I want to say 30-40%, depending on your list. And then Gmail has AMP, and Verizon Media Group just announced that they're going to be supporting AMP at their AMP Fest. And so that should be coming out in beta, I think, soon. So that gives you Yahoo and AOL. So if you've got Apple Mail, iPhone, Gmail, Yahoo, and AOL, it's a pretty good base to send to. So depending on your list, that might be everyone. You might not have any of it. So yeah.
Nice. And then lastly, where can people find you on the internet, and what do people do if they want to start using Parcel today?
Yeah, so you can find me on the internet at the Avi Goldman on Twitter. That's where I mostly hang out. And if you're interested in Parcel, check it out. It's useparcel.com. You can sign up. There's a free tier. You can build 5 emails for free, and get started kind of building the next generation of high quality, innovative, and accessible emails. Is kind of what Parcel is all about. So give it a try and let me know what you think.
Nice. Well, thank you for coming by. This was fun. It really brings me back building these emails from scratch. Makes me appreciate being able to drag and drop things in Courier, but I love that we have the capability to do these interactive emails. But yeah, we'll be back next week, hopefully with something Halloween themed. And I'm never on the right screen in StreamYard, but until then, we'll see you all later. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, Adrian. See ya.